See, I don't know if that's like an oxymoron. Can you get better at dad jokes or are they just getting worse?
Not to, I don't want to like upset our Pope One fans, but
How many times you just pick up your phone? You haven't gotten a notification or anything. Yeah, but it's just out of habit. You've picked up your phone, you unlocked it. You're like, don't know what I'm going to do with it. Yes, but you just put it back down. Yeah.
and so habit has the power to actually transform us into like absolutely new beings.
Those chips are going to make you feel real good, but what is it going to do for you in the long run?
Now I'm associating reading, which I find to be so boring, with something that I tremendously enjoy.
All right, we're back with the episode 2 of Grow. And as we're getting into the habit of having more episodes, this episode is going to be about habits. And one thing that you can count on is bed hunt. I'm getting so good at doing this. See, I don't know if that's like an oxymoron. Can you get better at dad jokes or are they just getting worse? But no, I'm nice. Yeah, they're getting bad. My wife reminds me all the time about my dad jokes, but it's fine. We're here now. What are we going to do? But I'll hike it up a little bit now. So Aristotle said that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Right? We're getting us hyped up a little bit there, right? Because look, the whole purpose of this podcast is, self-development, self-growth, and one of those ways is building habits, building good habits. So today's episode, we want to sort of talk about, what that means. What are good habits? What are bad habits? How can we, develop better habits? And towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about some tips and tricks of how to, develop good habits. But, just getting started, having habits is something where I feel like it's innate, within us, experts tell us that, we're biologically wired to have habits. So how do we, get on that trajectory of understanding what habits are to even begin with?
Yeah, I mean, if you define what a habit is, if you look at what a habit is, it's something that we do instinctively, or something that we do automatically. It's not something that we have to consciously think about. And so habit is sort of like a behavior that you've built over time based off of certain things that occur in your environment, or how you feel. And habits can be, obviously, they can be really detrimental. Like, obviously, you can have a really bad habit. You can also have a really good habit that, makes you a totally different person. The way that I like to think about habits, I guess, to say is, there's been a recent resurgence. I'm not sure if it's a resurgence, but what I've seen on social media is a lot of people are talking about Pokemon, and Pokemon cards are just flying off the shelves, and you see people running to like Costco or whatever, just grabbing as much as they can. And I grew up playing Pokemon. I sort of outgrew that, and yeah, I mean, I don't want to like upset our Pokemon fans, but nonetheless, when playing Pokemon, you train your Pokemon and it evolves, right? But you have to go out in the wild. You have to like keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. It learns new techniques, right? And then those techniques improve over time. When I'm talking about the video game version, not the card version. But essentially, after going through that rigorous training of repetitive training, what ends up happening is that Pokemon evolves into something greater than it was, stronger than it was. And it's not the same thing it was anymore. And so habit has the power to actually transform us into like absolutely new beings almost, to say, and not some other organism, a human being on another level.
No, it's because, I was watching this interview with LeBron James the other day, and he's like something like his 21st or 22nd season. He's at 40, right? And he's playing at an elite level. Right. And the reporter asked him, like, what's the most difficult thing that you've experienced, being able to have this longevity and being, like, playing the sport at such a high level. And his answer wasn't, like, obviously, he takes care of his body and, does all the things, and he's supremely talented, sure. But his answer was making sure that I don't fall out of love with the process. The process being, having a certain routine, having a certain schedule, putting that work in, practice, these habits that you build over time when you're hungry, right? When you're chasing something, when you're really, driven for something, you'll develop that habit. You do the things that you need to do to achieve that goal, or, attain it. But then once you achieve it or you attain it, that's what he's talking about. The importance of that success that he has is making sure that he remains consistent with the habits that he's developed and that he's built. I think that's really interesting because I feel like it applies to any and all facets of life, right? Because just as easy as it is to develop a good habit, I mean, it could also be just as easy to, you know, lose that habit, right? There's certain habits that we just sort of do. There was a study that said that 40% of what we do in a day is habits. It's not conscious decisions that we're making. Like you don't wake up and you're like, okay, now I will get out of bed. Now I will stand up. Now I'm gonna, it's like it's just the habits that you have, these ingrained things. So we are creatures of habit, and we crave those habits because we want to take a load off our minds. We want to be able to, do something which is systematic, but at the same time, it helped us achieve a goal. So habits then are not just something that's important, it's necessary for us to, if we want to achieve that greatness, if we want to achieve that excellence in life and that next level and, keep progressing, then the simple way, easier said than done, of course, is developing the habits.
I think if you understand the science behind habits, it's really easy to like hack. I mean, we've been hacked by industries, right? Like social media has hacked our, and I'm going to talk about the dopamine system and how that, reinforces habits and behaviors, right? So if you understand the science behind what habits are, and obviously we're not neuroscientists and or neurologists, but it's useful to know, and anybody can understand and know the science. Neuroplasticity, which is the ability for your brain to like rewire the different neurons it has that are associated with our behaviors and our abilities to perform certain actions, right? So whenever we do something new, there's a neural connection that's formed, right? And it's almost like a little tiny bicep, in your brain. Imagine that, right? And the more you curl it, the more you repeat that action, right? The more solid and natural sort of that habit becomes, right? And that's LTP, long-term potentiation, which is making that neural connection so strong that it becomes almost like natural, right? And you brought up LeBron James, right? And I watch basketball on occasion. I'm not a fan here or there, but a good example of somebody who's really utilized this science to improve himself as an athlete is Stephen Curry. And he shot the 3-pointer so many times that it's almost like his brain doesn't have to think about it, right? I mean, that's where sort of, the actions that we do start. They start in the prefrontal cortex, where we're making a conscious decision that, okay, I'm going to sit here and read this book, or I'm going to take this 3-pointer shot, right? So your brain is making a conscious decision. It's making calculations.
Yeah.
Once your brain is so used to making it, it shifts to the basal ganglia, and that's where we find procedural memories. So the procedure of grabbing the basketball and of taking it up to a specific height and then throwing it or shooting it, that all falls under, that part of the brain. And when we do things, or when we do a certain thing enough times, that's when it becomes a habit. That's when it becomes natural.
And that's what, that's a second nature, right?
Yeah.
Like Steph Curry, he knows, he says it himself. Sometimes he knows when the shot's going in. That's why you see those clips of him turning around before the ball's even reached the net, because he knows. He's shot it so many times where he knows exactly, like, if I hit this exact movement at, and I know for a fact that this ball's going through the boot, right? And so that's what habits can do for us. It can get us to that level of confidence where this is now unlocked. This is just automatic. This thing that you're doing is, these habits that you've built, the result is X, Y, and Z success. But that's the thing, because we're such creatures of habit. Look at the algorithms on social media, right? Yeah. They can track, what our, what we like, what we don't like. If we're scrolling past something, if we're staying.
Even if you're talking about something, you'll see they're talking about habits. I'm gonna have a habit
100%. All these inspirational videos. I was staying off social media for a while after this. I don't have the bandwidth to see all of those again. But I think, regardless, we know that this is something that can be tapped into, right? Habits are, like you were saying, it's almost like if you can maximize that potential, if you can understand the mechanisms of how habits work, then you can maximize that potential. Like, for example, how many times you just pick up your phone? You haven't gotten a notification or anything.
Yeah.
But it's just out of habit. You've picked up your phone, you unlocked it. You're like, don't know what I'm going to do with it. Yes. But you just put it back down. Yeah. Right? Yeah. There is certain the Stanford University, they basically boiled it down to the sort of this like 3-step formula of how habits are built. The habit, exactly, right? So the first thing is the cue, right? So for example, in this instant, it could be a notification that you've received on your phone, right? Yeah. And then the next step is the habit that you're building, or the what's it called, the routine.
Yeah.
Right. So now you've seen the notification. Now routinely what you're going to do is you're going to pick it up, you're going to open, and you're going to scroll, and you're going to see, through Instagram or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Right. And then the third step is the reward. What does it do for you? Right. Like, how do you feel after you've done that, whatever that routine was, whatever that habit was. So this is the mechanism whereby you can understand how habits are built. And it's really interesting. I was thinking about it. I was thinking about, okay, in my life, for example, where can I sort of pinpoint this sort of having happened, right? Maybe I didn't even realize I was consciously doing it.
Yeah.
Right. But you think about, there's the call to prayer. And then when the call to prayer happens, all right, it's just automatic. You know instantly what it means, right? It means that, all right, it's time to pray. And so you pray. And what's the reward? I mean, we're taught that, the remembrance of God and praying, it brings about contentment in your heart. It brings about this peace. It brings about this ease. Or the reward is that if you've prayed about something that, you have the certainty that's going to be fulfilled, and that prayer is answered, right?
Yeah.
So at least in my life, when I was thinking about this, I was like, this really does work, because what Islam has done, for example, is that it's developed this habit in each and every one of its followers who follow its teachings, that 5 times a day, every single day, you're going to be doing this action.
Yeah.
And the cue is that when the call to prayer happens, what happens, the routine is that you pray, and the reward is that you gain this, connection with the higher being, with God, right? With the supreme being, the creator of, the entire universe.
And it's interesting you brought that up, because I was just thinking while you were speaking about how, prayer is like, this is an inbuilt mechanism of Islam, right? That it's fostering human beings that are, habitually, like, it's inculcating good habits. So for the 5 prayers, what have they done for me personally? Like, you mentioned call of prayer as the cue, right? Sometimes I get this inner cue. We're so used to that, we're so used to praying 5 times a day, right? Yeah. We get this inner cue. Now, when we go to pray, right, we have those spiritual benefits. Obviously, there's no question there, right? We're connecting with God and, developing our spirituality. And the prayer is an art form in itself, right? So the art of prayer, you're practicing that art form, right? Yeah. And you're perfecting that mode of worship. That aside, one thing that I've seen that's drastically changed in me is that I've become a more timely person. So I'm on time, because what this inner clock has done for me is it's told me that whatever I have to do it on the road. And yeah, the fact that I know that I have to be at a specific time, at a specific place 5 times a day, has made me more aware of the fact that if I have made a commitment, if I made, if I have something to do that's important, right, that means something to me, or it means something to somebody else, I have to make sure I'm there on time, whatever I committed to. And again, I think this is a good junction to get into the benefits, I guess, the benefits of habits. We've been talking about science behind it. What are the sort of benefits? What are we getting as a result? We're evolving into a new being, right? But one of the things that I've seen that's helped me tremendously with building habits is it frees up your mind so much, right? Yeah. Because when you have to consciously think about something, again, your prefrontal cortex is being used to consciously think about, okay, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and there's no structure. Whereas if you transfer that burden to another part of the brain, right, now you're unconsciously doing that, and the brain that's the part of the brain that's responsible for making conscious decisions and other cognitive functions, that's able to now use those cognitive resources elsewhere.
You think about it like load management, like that. You have so many, life is so fast paced. There's so much going on. There's so many decisions to be made.
Yeah.
Why not do yourself a favor to where some of like the basic things in life that you need to do, your schedule, your routine, what time you wake up, what time what time you're gonna, be at the office, or you're gonna go to school, all these different things.
Yeah.
If you develop a schedule, if you develop, a certain routine, a certain habit in your life that that this is what I'm gonna do at this time, then, like you said, you're not constantly having to make those conscious decisions, which sort of frees your mind up to sort of think a bit more, about the things that, matter, the decisions that you need to make in life, whether it's, doing excelling well at school, growing your business, whatever the case might be. But I think that's the main thing that I find habits can do, right? Even in my life, I for me, the biggest thing is, like, I like to take as much as I can and turn it into a habit, because it's so easy to want to do something or need to do something, but find any and every excuse not to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when that happens, then we're all prone to it. We've all been there. And I know it's something that, it happened to me as well. But when something is a habit, right? When something is so ingrained that it's second nature to you,
Yeah.
then at that point, there's no, worry or fear of, okay, well, I might procrastinate on this a little bit, or I might, whatever the case might be. So I think habits are one of those, habits are, really important to just overall development and growth, and allowing yourself to become the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And again, going back to that, quote of Aristotle, where excellence then is not something that you're constantly striving to do. It's like you've laid the groundwork already for excellence. Now all you're doing is, like, it's like you've entered the code, and now the machine is operating on its own. And that's essentially what habits are meant to do.
Yeah, and I think that if you want to really accomplish your goals, and you want to, like, we tend to find easy ways of doing things that we want, right? Like, now, there's AI. Everyone's using AI just because we've used our mental capacity to create something greater, or not greater, but something that can do something faster. Yeah, right. And so in doing so, we made whatever our tasks are easier for us. And I think that habits are sort of like that AI. It's like working on its own, right? So I often find that if I have a goal, right, that I have to make habits that are consistent in producing results that take me closer to that goal. Yeah. Right. So whatever that goal may be, whether it's getting healthier, whatever it's like, if it's getting healthier, obviously that's going to need me to change my diet, changing eating habits, right? And or changing exercise habits, or building exercise habits if I don't have any. But again, this is an excellent way to rewire your brain. And I say hack because it's literally hacking, because you just rewire your brain in a way that's that it's just going to keep doing it on its own. It's like,
because it's consistency. Yeah. It's the key to it is consistency. I think that's sort of like the essence behind habits, right? Because we're talking about LeBron, we're talking about Steph Curry. They've been consistent at their craft, which is why they've achieved that excellence. They built those habits of excellence, right? And the Holy Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, peace be upon him, he also said that the best action that you can do is the one that you do most consistent.
Yeah, the action most dear to God.
Exactly. The action most dear to God is the action that is done most consistent. Yeah. And we were talking about the prayers, the 5 daily prayers, and they become a habit, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing where it's like, okay, well, at the outset, it might seem like such a difficult task, such a tall task, right? Okay, 5 times a day, I gotta somehow make it on time, and I got all these things, right? But again, it's about consistency.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get up one day and be like, all right, I'm just gonna do all of them, all of a sudden I'm gonna start. Why not take those steps and do what you can do consistently, and then
Build on that.
build on that, right? So if that means, okay, you know what? No matter what, one prayer a day, 100% for sure, I'm gonna do, right? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm gonna, try and work on that. Right now, the one is a habit, right? You've developed the habit of praying once a day. And then it's like what we were talking about in the previous episode, where it's like, okay, then you never want to regress. So, okay, the one is solid, it's Saya, right? Now, okay, 2, let me add a second one, let me add a third one, let me add a fourth one, right? Sometimes people, they'll get on, they'll get so motivated, they'll be like, I'm going to wake up, middle of the night, and I'm going to pray as well.
Yeah.
But again, is that something that you're going to be able to do consistently? Or is this just something that you're doing one day and then you're going to crash with it on time?
And then you won't remember it for months, because you have this sort of like mental trauma that that was very taxing for my brain, right?
Exactly. And again, that's where the reward comes in, right? Where you see the change that happens, these positive, and that's where, shifting a little bit to like identifying good habits versus bad habits, right? Sometimes bad habits we might not even realize yet, right? Are, bad for us. It might just be as simple as, it's just a habit. There's a bag of chips. I'm going to put my hand in it. I'm going to have some, right? Just walking by, just, but sometimes it takes that deliberate sort of.
I like chips, by the way.
Yeah, well, so do I, which is a problem, right? That's the problem.
Yeah.
Because then you can't help yourself. I can't help myself. And then, like, where do you stop? But once you develop this habit of, okay, understanding that this has a benefit for me and this doesn't. Yeah. This is the reward versus this is the risk. Yeah. All right. There are bad habits out there as well. All right. Like, for example, smoking, let's say, right? Like it's something which is fairly common, right? And it's tough for people to give it up just because of like, once you've gotten into the habit, now you're so far. And there's other chemicals involved and stuff like that. It's addicting. You can't really, it's tough to get rid of that habit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But point being that there are good habits and then there are bad habits. And once you've identified that this is the benefit that this has for me, when I crave, this is what it does for me. When I get up, at an early hour, right? I'm fresher, throughout the day. I get more time, I get more hours in the day. Whatever the habit might be, whatever the thing is that you're trying to build might be, when you see it having that reward for you, which is why they say that, okay, if you're trying to get into the habit of exercising, okay, well then add a reward to it, for example, right? Or like as you're on the treadmill, maybe throw on your, favorite TV show or whatever the case might be. It's just an excuse for you to, you get to work out, you get to exercise, but at the same time, you get your entrance.
And it might seem weird, I think, in the beginning, right? To just associate your favorite show. It's something we're not used to, right? Like watching your favorite show or listening to something that you enjoy, not eating something you enjoy while you're exercising. That would be like counterintuitive. It might seem strange because I tried this, right? I did something that I enjoyed while trying to inculcate some habit.
Yeah.
It seems strange, but slowly your brain starts to associate what you enjoy with the habit you're trying to build. Yeah. And you're doing both those things simultaneously.
And yes, like in a world where, it's all about instant gratification, right? Like that quick, those chips are going to make you feel real good, but what is it going to do for you in the long run, right?
I can't get rid of them. Sorry.
Teach their own, I guess. But
yeah.
No, but that's the thing. Again, even in moderation, right?
Yeah.
Everything is fine in moderation as long as you're able to, delineate where that line, where that, and which is tough to do, right? Yeah. Because like when something is so good, right, it makes you feel good, it makes you happy.
Yeah.
But then again, it's about that introspection. And I think a lot of it, and I guess I'm realizing as well that a lot of these topics that we're even going to talk about on this podcast are going to come down to that, introspection.
Yeah.
But one thing that I really like, something that's mentioned in the Quran is that you should consider and introspect and see what you're doing for yourself in the future. How are you setting yourself up for the next moment, for the next day, right? And what are those things that you're doing now that are going to benefit you in the future? And those are the habits that we want to build, right? Those habits that help us in the long run. Mm-hmm. So let's say, if you want to talk,
well, I guess this is tip number 1, right? So we're getting into the tips.
Exactly.
This is what our audience has been waiting for essentially the whole episode. So we're rambling, but this is the sort of the core thing that the sort of new things that we've tried or new that we try to dig up. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, right, that broad perspective of where are you trying to get to versus where you are right now, and just like instant gratification. So delineating, instant gratification versus long-term success. So that's the first tip that really resonated with me, because when you take a step back and you look at what you're doing and that, and then where you're trying to get to, that inherently helps you understand, okay, these are the habits that I need to build. These are the things that I need to do. If there's like an exam coming up, for example, I need to study this many hours, this many times, this many days, right? And I'm going to build a schedule and I'm going to stick to that schedule. And that's going to allow me to achieve success in the exam. You got a work project. Okay, I need to, that work-life balance. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I maximize my time. I'm going to get up at this time. We're going to get to work at this time, these sorts of things. So you look at what your long-term goal is and whatever you need to do to achieve that, and the habits, the mechanisms that you need to build to, get to that. So that's one of the things that I really like.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good tip. One of the things that sort of resonates with me, and I guess this is tip number 2, which is to create an environment that helps you build that habit, right? So one example in my life was that I felt like I wasn't reciting the Quran as much as I should. So it was part of my life, but I wanted to make it a more, a deeper part, a more core value, right? And so what I did was, wherever I noticed that I would be spending a lot of time, whether it was in my living room, in my home office, in my work office, anywhere where I was sitting for a long time, I put a copy of it put on there. And I noticed that just by being in that environment and having it there in my peripheral vision, right, I was able to like just crack it open and read it more. And I felt like I was, referring to it a lot more. I was reading it a lot more. I was reciting it a lot more. I was like, thinking about it a lot more. Even on my phone, like the home screen, I put the Quran app as like in the sort of main area where my main apps are that I use most frequently. So quick access wherever, right? And sometimes I may not really consciously think about, that I'm going to do this, but it's just that it's in my environment, so that it's right there. I just grab it, or it's on my phone. I just open it up. And this extends to not just, the things in your environment, but it's also about the people in your environment. It's about how your environment makes you feel. So surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded or pursuing the same goals. So obviously spending a lot of time around couch potatoes isn't going to help you work out. It's going to pull you back into the couch.
Yeah.
Spending a lot of time, again, with and he could be any group of people. And this goes the negative way as well, the negative way, where if you're spending too much time with the wrong kind of people, it's going to develop a wrong kind of habit. So I think environment for me was probably one of the most important factors about as far as building habits is concerned. But yeah, that really, I guess, resonated with me, and it still helps me to this day.
That's really good. I remember one time, just scholarly person, he said that one thing that he does as well, right, which is that he just always has a book, like exactly what you described. He always has a book open, right, because he's bound to sort of just get onto it or whatever. So it's a really good way of building the environment around you. And then the next thing that sort of I really liked was to replace, not to remove, right? Because all right, let's say you got a bad habit, right? And whatever the case might be, you're eating too much junk food, or you're scrolling too much on social media, let's say, right? It's really hard to sort of just go cold turkey and say, all right, I'm just going to drop this. I'm not going to do it anymore. But, there's this analogy where sometimes it takes a thorn to remove a thorn, right? And so sometimes it might take a habit to replace a habit. So one thing might be that, all right, rather than scrolling on social media, which we're all guilty of doing right before bed, right? Rather than just scrolling on social media, you replace that by reading a book. Right? So it's this, you're consciously aware that, okay, I'm trying to get rid of this habit, and I'm trying to build this habit of, let's say, reading more, right? So it's sort of like interchangeable, right? Okay, rather than just saying, I'm not going to scroll on social media anymore, you're just laying there like staring at his ceiling, right, until you fall asleep. You can be like, okay, I'm going to replace it with something.
Yeah.
So this could, be the same thing with anything. Like if you're, I'm gonna come at you with this chips thing. Like if you're constantly eating, chips, and right, it's like, oh, let's face it alone. No. Now we're here. We're gonna deep dive into that. Yeah? Right? Okay, it might just be replacing it with like maybe, let's say, a healthier snack. There's healthier chips out there or whatever. Again, I don't want to be a hypocrite.
Obviously, with higher cost, with a higher price tag as well.
Yeah, but again, it all.
You're right. Honestly, I'm not.
Yeah, like the sacrifices that you're willing to make to self-improve, and so better. So but I think I really like that as well, because just like for anyone, just the thought of just completely abandoning something that you've been doing is really hard to do.
Yeah.
But if you slowly start replacing it rather than completely removing it, then slowly you're just replacing a bad habit.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, because that, you spoke about the habit loop earlier, right? So what that does is, I guess, the way that I was sort of picturing it in my mind was that the cue that initiates or that, I guess, that preemptively or comes before the actual behavior, the cue itself becomes the bad habit, right? So you're about to scroll, that's your cue, not to scroll and to do something else.
Yeah.
It's a good habit, right? To replace it. One of the other tips that I brought was something that I feel I lacked in. So I guess I think the tips that I brought were things that really helped me personally. That's why I'm bringing it to the table. One is planning. So tip number 4 is planning, as opposed to not planning and just having the, okay, we all have this realization when we're introspecting, okay, I need to read more books. Okay, don't do that. Don't say I need to read more books. Plan it. Actually make a conscious plan about it.
Because it's one thing to like know you need to do something. It's another thing to take actionable steps towards.
And it's called the if then, or the like implementing that thing in your life. So instead of saying I need to read more books, say on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. I'm going to dedicate 1 hour to reading, right? That way, you're not going to, first of all, overwhelm yourself with, we talked about overwhelming yourself with too much, right? Start small, right? Read 1 page a day if you have to, because it's going to be still more than if you read, say, 50 pages a day, burn out, and then not read for the rest of the year. Imagine you're reading 1 page a day, that's 365 pages, right? So it's still like 300 or so pages more than you would have read. Just start small, right? And, you know, plan for it, schedule it, put your reminders in your phone, you know, take those, you know, Instagram and Twitter, X now, and all of these other push notifications, turn those things off and put your reminders on that at 1 p.m. on this day, you know, I gotta read, right? And that's how you're actually going to develop the habit. Soon you're not going to need those reminders. Soon reading or whatever the habit you're developing is going to become so meaningful that you're going to end up, it's going to become part of you, right?
Yeah. And I think you sort of touched on 2 in 1, which is good. It's like 4A, 4B, because the planning and then the start small, right?
Yes.
Because that's really important as well, right? Where like, you know, having this mountain in front of you to, you know, to climb up, it seems like an insurmountable task, right? Whatever your goal is, it's not going to happen in 1 day, right? You're not just going to take 1 leap and you're there. So it's about taking those steps that are going to help you get there. Sometimes it's like taking the step to building the habit, and the habit's going to help you get to your goal. So it's like a step-by-step process. But the next one that I wanted to bring in, which I actually didn't even realize that, you know, I might try to do sometimes, but it actually makes so much sense. And personally for me, this is maybe one of my favorite ones, which is habit stacking. So I was saying that 40% of what we do in a day is habit, right? We already know that, let's say, for example, 12 o'clock, I'm going to have lunch, right? It's just a habit. You know, this is part of your routine that at this time is when I eat. But let's say you're also trying to, you know, get more active, go on more walks, for example. So what you can do is you already have this one solidified habit that I eat lunch at 12 p.m. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach another habit with it, as soon as I eat my lunch, I'm going to go for a walk. So now those 2 things are attached to one another. So in terms of like, you know, that sometimes it's just about taking that first step. Well, you've already taken the first step because you've attached it to something that you know you're automatically going to be doing.
Yeah.
Now, when, you know, mentally you prepared yourself that, okay, once I finish this, then I'm going to do this. That's called habit stacking. And it's really, I feel like it's one of those hacks even, because it's sort of like you're already getting yourself halfway there, because it's like you've combined those things with something that you're already doing and something that you want to do. And when you combine them, it's like you're already halfway there. Now you just got to follow through on the other half, which makes it much easier. So habit stacking is one of those things which really resonated with me. I think it's really cool that it's like I said, it's one of those hacks to build it in habits.
Yeah. And I think you just touched on the sort of tip that I was, and we alluded to this earlier as well. We didn't go into too much depth, but I think it's a nice way to sum up the 6 tips that we brought. And obviously there's so much more, but habits don't really have to be a chore, right? They should be something you enjoy. And so coupling a habit like with something that you enjoy is a really strong way of solidifying that habit. So if I, for example, enjoy going on walks, right? But I lack in reading. So maybe I'll take a audiobook with me, or maybe I'll take a book with me and I'll stop on the way and I'll read while I go on a walk, go on a nature walk or something. But what that's doing is it's not only helping me read and develop the habit of reading, but it's also helping me enjoy read, because now I'm associating reading, which I find to be so boring, right, with something that I tremendously enjoy, which is walking. We're having a nature walk, walking in the forest. So this is something really powerful that you can use. And again, these are all ways that we can hack our brains and like sort of rewire them so that we become better people, right? And again, this we talked so much about this in the first episode, about growing and about becoming better, right? So I think habits are a tremendously powerful tool that we have. If we understand how they work, and they're being constantly used against us, right? We talked about social media, and we talked about how industries, they know that because we they know what we like, they know what we like to see, and they keep showing us that, and they keep getting the dopamine to release in our minds, and we're just hooked onto whatever they're feeding us. Why don't we use that for ourselves? We're letting other industries and the rest of the world use that against us. Why don't we start using the science of our bodies, for our own advantage?
Because we are creatures of habit, right? We know this. We know that science proves it. In any way we look at it, we know that we're creatures of habit. So why not tap into that, like you're saying, and use it for our own benefit, right? Take it by the horns and make it our own. So I think, and again, it also comes down to accountability, right? Holding yourself accountable. Journal it, write it down, right? People have vision boards, right? Things that they want to achieve, right? If there's a certain habit or certain goal, like have a checklist, have, like all these different apps these days that are out there, did you, have you drank this much water today? Did you, have you worked out today? Whatever the habit it is, you can create your own checklist, and you can, hold yourself accountable, get a group together, right? It's always easier to do things, together.
Yeah.
Right. And so get a group together that you hold yourselves accountable, each other accountable. So when you have that accountability, and you're trying to work towards building those good habits, then, you can achieve, the success that you're trying to aim for. And so we're also going to try and maintain the habit of this podcast and keep coming back with more and more episodes. This was a seamless transition.
Yeah.
But we'll be back with another episode very soon. And can't wait to be back and have another conversation.
Yeah. I hope everybody enjoyed that. Thanks so much.